Blues intros. Million ways to do it, but they all should follow some basic rules, I guess, or ideas. Essentially, the intro of a blues tune is going to introduce the chord changes, especially in today's blues world. There's guys playing kind of non-traditional blues, and that intro should kind of outline the chords while the person showing off is playing over them. They should all end up, really, mostly anyway, to a 5 chord, because the 5 chord is telling the band, let's get this going. And the example that I just played, that's one that the band's gonna kick in at that point, because they hear that walk-up bass line, and that's really the signal to get going. So I'll talk about what I just did, and then a little bit more about turnarounds. What I just did was in B, and I just outlined the 1 chord. It's a quick change, excuse me. Playing the flat 7 of the 4 chord. Back to the 1. And then the turnaround. So this is basically it. It demonstrated that the tune was in B, that it was a quick change, and the feel of it was slow, and so it really is kind of introducing the song and getting the band ready to play another slow blues, which everybody loves except the drummer and bass player and anybody else in the band except the guitar player. But I think before getting into lick kind of intros, I would want you to focus mostly on turnarounds as the intro, and playing turnarounds in a couple of different ways. We've gone over a few, but one of the more basic ones. One of the most basic ones is just that. I could play it with a lot of different feels, tempos, that kind of thing. Depending on the tempo and the feel and whatnot, that's what I'm telling the band, hey, this is how I want to play this tune. And so it's not just knowing a lick for playing a blues tune to start the song, it's knowing that you're telling the band how this is going to go and the audience, and you're outlining the chord changes, and whether the 4 chord is a quick change or a slow change. So there's kind of a job to do as well. It's not just a time to show off, which is ultimately the best part of it all. So just work on, for instance, in E. You don't have to play through the entire progression, but at least be able to start it out that way. Be able to maybe play the closed position of that up here. Be able to transfer to so you don't always have to, in E, play it down here. No matter if it's down here or up here, it's got to end up on the 5 chord, and that's another thing to just know. It's not necessarily, it's lick related because you're always outlining the chords, but you just need to know that you end up on a 5 chord. And that if you can walk up to it, it's even better. Or the bass player needs to do it. So think of that when you're thinking of a intro to a blues song. Somebody says, hey, let's jam an A. All right, cool. Be able to kind of just go right into it as if you're in a blues jam and they need to get going. Play as many turnarounds as you know. I'm not current right now on the turnarounds that you know, so that's something that I probably need to know. But any turnaround that you know, play that turnaround or those turnarounds in several keys, at least E, B flat and B, as they both get used a lot. Anything past that is gratuitous, but at least a few key centers to be able to start those blues intros. If you have any questions on that, let me know. But otherwise, the other thing about turnarounds is maybe not soloing with them, but using them to fill in space and to express ideas. If you do that blues jam in E, if you're not the guy stuck with playing that boring pattern, and your lead or it's your turn or whatever it is, don't think of scales, think of the turnaround, and using bits and pieces of the turnaround to come up with ideas and to essentially solo with. But if you're just playing rhythm, it can just add to the rhythm. And so if you're doing the most boring pattern of all, it can make that boring blues shuffle a lot more interesting. And it can also really it being the turnaround can be used to solo with. You can play an entire solo just basically tweaking the turnaround. And so think of those basic blues shuffle patterns you have. But just think of that turnaround as filling in space. Or just making it more interesting. Ultimately, you'll end up using that turnaround, I think, or I do, in soloing as well, because it fills in space so well that essentially sometimes even when you're soloing, you tend to go with what you know, and the turnaround can get you out of a out of a moment where you've got no ideas. But you do know the turnaround, and if you do, you better start playing it if nothing else is happening. So kind of think of it that way too. Turnaround as an introduction to a song, and we'll do a different video on some of the turnaround ideas, like the intro, where it's more single note kind of thing and not necessarily playing a turnaround, but outlining the chords. So work on that stuff, and let me know if the intro ideas don't happen or don't make sense, or you can't find where to start the turnaround and end it, those kinds of things. And then if you're not understanding kind of filling in the spaces on blues shuffles, let me know. And I wouldn't worry about playing blues chord progression with coming up with ideas. So if I'm just really basic, I wouldn't worry too much about the 4-chord coming. I would just stay on a 1-chord jam, and I don't know, I'm just messing around, but just come up with some ideas, see what works. When you've got a couple of things that you can fill in that blues shuffle pattern with, whatever it is, make it simple, and then stick to that one idea and work that with your blues shuffle pattern until it's comfortable, and then work in swing to the 4 chord. Filling in with the 4 chord, let's have that discussion on another video. So work on those turnarounds.